Nature, to be commanded, must be obeyed. Francis Bacon said that. And those words feel incredibly relevant for what we're discussing today. Okay, let's unpack this. We're taking a deep dive into a really critical discussion. It's surrounding this huge development project, the Great Nicobar Infrastructure Project.
Monumental, really.
Exactly. And it's planned for one of the most seismically active regions on the planet. So our mission today is to dissect the differing scientific viewpoints on the tsunami risk. It's a very real risk for this project. We're using insights directly from sources, particularly a really good in-depth report in the Hindu. And this deep dive, it's specifically for you, the learner. Maybe you're a UPSC aspirant trying to get a handle on current affairs.
Which this definitely is. Crucial stuff.
Right. For mains, for prelims too, actually.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're just an engaged citizen wanting to understand these complex policy decisions, environmental governance. This is for you. We want to give you that, nuanced understanding, help connect the dots between big development plans and, the raw power of nature. Okay, so first off, the Great Nicobar Infrastructure Project, or GNIP. The scale is just, wow, it's why there's so much debate.
It's not just one thing, is it?
Not at all. We're talking a massive transshipment port, a big international airport aiming for, 4 million passengers a year?
Yeah, that's the plan, plus a whole new township.
A greenfield township designed for maybe 300,000 people eventually.
Yeah.
And of course, power. A 450 MVA gas and solar power plant to run it all.
So basically building a city from scratch.
Pretty much. And the budget reflects that. 72,000 crores. It's huge. Epic ambition. But the location, that's the kicker, isn't it? This incredibly volatile geological setting.
Absolutely. And that geological context is, it's fundamental here. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands aren't just sort of prone to earthquakes.
Oh.
No, they're in the highest possible category. Category 5, extreme vulnerability.
And why is that? What's happening down there?
It's basic plate tectonics, but on a huge scale. You have the Indian tectonic plate literally diving, grinding underneath the Burmese microplate.
Right.
This happens along something called the Andaman Trench. Geologists call it subduction. And this process, subduction, it's what generates the Earth's biggest earthquakes and tsunamis.
Like 2004?
Exactly like 2004. We all remember the Indian Ocean tsunami earthquake. It devastated this very region. Locally, in the islands, at least 1,500 lives were lost.
Terrible.
And nationally, around 10,000 Indians. It's just a stark, undeniable reminder of the power we're dealing with right there.
It really is. So given that history, that power, you'd expect the risk assessment to be incredibly thorough, right? That's the Environment Impact Assessment, the EIA.
A key document, yes.
So what did this EIA, almost 900 pages long, conclude about the tsunami threat? How did they weigh that risk?
Well, the EIA report, it was commissioned by the Andaman and Nicobar Islands Integrated Development Corporation, carried out by Vimta Labs. It looked at the probability of another mega-earthquake, something like the 9.2 magnitude 1 2004, and it assessed that probability as low.
Low.
So low, that's what the report says. Now, they state this conclusion was primarily drawn from a 2019 study by scientists at IIT Kanpur.
Okay, so they based it on scientific research?
Supposedly. Based on that IIT Kanpur study, the EIA gave these specific return periods. They estimated 420 to 750 years between mega earthquakes magnitude 9 or more.
And for slightly smaller but still large ones?
For large ones, say, over magnitude 7.5, they estimated a shorter return period, maybe 80 to 120 years.
Okay, hang on. Low probability based on a study.
Yeah.
But we had a 9.2 quake just under 2 decades ago. That feels off somehow.
That raises questions, certainly.
But here's where it gets really interesting, maybe even worrying. Because, yes, the EIA referenced that IIT Kanpur study. But it seems they might have left out some pretty crucial bits, details that really change that whole low-risk picture. And this, understandably, has scientists quite concerned. So what did they leave out?
Exactly. This is the core of the controversy. The EIA cites the study, yes, but it omits critical findings from that very same study.
Like what?
Well, the IIT Kanpur report itself, the one based on analyzing sediments at Badabalu Beach in South Andaman, it didn't just talk about return periods, it also found clear evidence of at least 7 large tsunami events hitting the region in the last 8,000 years.
7 major tsunamis.
Oh, but here's the kicker, the part that's completely absent from the EIA report. The original IIT Kanpur study explicitly stated, and this is a direct quote from the Hindus reporting on it, Andaman segment has enough accumulated strain to trigger a mega tsunamigenic subduction zone earthquake in near future.
In the near future.
In near future, and that there was a 2,000-year gap in the region's sediment history added uncertainty to the prediction of future earthquakes.
Wow. Okay, so the study they used actually warned of accumulated strain for a megaquake in the near future. And pointed out a huge data gap causing uncertainty.
Precisely. Omitting that observation, the near future potential, the uncertainty fundamentally changes the risk assessment. Many scientists see it as a serious misrepresentation.
So it's not just selective reading. It feels like ignoring the main warnings. And the scientist who led that study, Professor Javed Malik from IIT Kanpur, he hasn't been quiet about this, has he?
Not at all. Professor Malik has been quite clear. He strongly recommends that planners conduct site-specific studies.
Site-specific, meaning right there in Nicobar.
Yes, specifically in the Car Nicobar and Campbell Bay areas where the project is focused. His logic is sound. An earthquake starting in Nicobar might behave very differently from the 2004 one, which started near Banda Aceh in Indonesia.
Different location, different impact. Makes sense.
Right. He points out that the whole Andaman-Sumatra fault line is vulnerable, but we actually don't know enough about which specific parts are most likely to rupture next.
So there are big unknowns.
Huge unknowns. He apparently tried to raise these points with government officials back in 2020. Still waiting for a response, according to the report. His goal was, and presumably still is, to understand the history better, figure out potential inundation patterns, things you'd really want to know before building massive infrastructure.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
And this call for more specific study, it's not just him, is it? Other scientists are raising red flags too.
Absolutely. C.P. Rajendran, a respected geoscientist professor at NIS in Bengaluru, he echoes these concerns and adds more layers.
What are his main points?
Rajendran's research and other emerging studies point to something quite worrying: the possibility of multiple unknown parallel fault lines south of the Andamans, closer to Nicobar.
Unknown lines.
Unknown in terms of the energy they've stored up, their rupture history, we just don't know. And he emphasizes something crucial: earthquake recurrence is non-linear.
Meaning it's not predictable like clockwork.
Exactly. You could go centuries without a big one, get complacent, and then bam, a massive event. It doesn't follow a neat schedule. He also notes there are local fault lines within Great Nicobar Island itself, and they've seen changes in land levels there before big quakes, potential warning signs.
So, given all that, what's his advice?
His advice is pretty blunt. He says it is better to avoid such an area for a port or a container terminal. He calls it an extremely geodynamic area where major projects are just particularly vulnerable.
Okay, so massive project, seismic hotspot, an EIA saying low risk, but apparently omitting key warnings from its own source study.
Yeah.
Then you have leading scientists urging detailed site-specific studies, warning about unknown faults, accumulated strain, and even advising against building there.
That sums it up pretty well.
So, what is the official response? How are the planners, the ministry, dealing with these stark warnings and this level of uncertainty?
Well, that's the crux of it, isn't it? According to the Hindus report, a senior scientist from the Ministry of Earth Sciences did acknowledge something important.
What's that?
They acknowledged that, no, specific site studies in the Nicobar Islands were not commissioned for this specific project.
They admitted that. Okay.
Yes. But their perspective seems to be that forecasting exactly when a massive quake will hit is, well, impossible.
Which is probably true. Predicting exact timing is notoriously hard.
Right. And therefore, they argue, a calculated risk has to be taken to proceed with the project.
A calculated risk.
That's the term used. They did mention that design codes would be built in, depending on the buildings, to mitigate some risk. But they were also quite candid, apparently saying, and this is another quote, "We can never say when the next major quake or tsunami will occur. There is much that is unknown."
Wow. Calculated risk right next to much that is unknown. That juxtaposition is stark, especially for a project this big in a place like this.
It certainly is.
So let's bring this back to you, the listener. Whether you're deep in UPSC prep, focusing on Maine's current affairs, or just trying to be an informed citizen, what do we take away from this clash between the official assessment and the scientific warnings?
I think, zooming out, you see a really complex challenge in decision-making. This project, remember, it got environmental and preliminary forest clearance, but it's faced other hurdles too.
Right. Wasn't there something with the National Green Tribunal?
Yes, exactly. The NGT actually ordered a review citing concerns about biodiversity loss, the sheer number of trees to be felled, the impact on the resident indigenous tribes. So the seismic risk is just one, albeit huge, part of a much bigger, more complex picture.
Okay.
So the whole situation really frames the Great Nicobar Project as this intense balancing act. You're trying to balance, developmental aspirations against environmental protection and against disaster preparedness, all in a place that is objectively very, very vulnerable.
And for the listener?
For you, I think it highlights how crucial critical thinking is. How do you analyze the way scientific data gets interpreted or maybe selectively used in these huge, expensive projects, especially in places that are ecologically and geologically sensitive? It really throws a spotlight on the complexities of public policy, risk assessment, and development.
Right, so just to quickly summarize the key points from our deep dive today,
Right.
we have this incredibly ambitious Great Nicobar project in a major earthquake zone. We have the official EIA saying low risk for megaquakes. But then crucially, we have the scientific counter-narrative showing how the EIA seems to have omitted vital warnings about accumulated strain, near-future risks, data gaps from the very study it cited.
Yeah, the IIT Kanpur study warnings.
Exactly. And we have leading scientists urging caution, demanding site-specific studies, which all leads to this official position of taking a calculated risk, despite acknowledging much that is unknown.
The very tricky position.
Absolutely. And for you, especially UPSC aspirants, understanding this whole dynamic, the science, the assessment, the emissions, the official stance is vital for daily current affairs, mains analysis, and just grasping governance challenges in India.
And perhaps it leaves us all with a final thought to mull over. Something like this. When you're facing such clear geological volatility, such strong scientific warnings, at what point does a calculated risk stop being calculated and start feeling more like, an unacceptable gamble? Particularly with infrastructure on this scale and the human lives that will eventually rely on it.
That is definitely something to think about. A powerful question. If this deep dive gave you valuable insights, maybe sparked some curiosity, or it gave you that aha moment for connecting the dots, please do consider liking this deep dive.
Yeah, it helps others find it too.
Definitely. And subscribe to our channel for more discussions like this, unpacking critical topics. And please leave us a comment below. If you have more questions or other subjects you'd like us to explore, let us know. Your engagement really does help us shape these deep dives. Until next time, keep digging deeper.